Reading. It's like being completely present and completely absent at the same time.
Hello and welcome to Sundoku for Reading Tragics Everywhere. I'm Kath Keneally. Today's episode looks at a new book of great topical interest that also happens to be largely a book of poetry. It's called Laila's Story and it's by Mij Tanith. She's an author and a playwright and an activist, and this book documents her involvement with the Circle of Friends refugee support group, especially her time spent helping over some years a Hazari Afghan woman, single mother of 5 daughters, arrive in and finally settle in Adelaide. I asked Mij first to explain her remarks in the preface to Laila's story about putting off the writing of this book for a long time.
Well, I did avoid writing about it because at the time I was far too busy actually doing the work, getting Laila and her daughters here. And afterwards, it was a kind of burnout. And it wasn't until somebody offered me their holiday cottage on Kangaroo Island. I spent a couple of weeks there. For the first week, I did nothing much at all. And then I started tentatively to try to write the story, not thinking for a moment I might get it published, but just so that I could understand the process and what had gone on and what I was feeling.
And you did do that. And here we are with the beautiful Spinifex book. And I'm going to approach this by asking you to read occasionally during our talk some of the beautiful poems. The second half of the book are poems that start from when Laila and children arrive in Adelaide. That segment is called Adelaide. But in the actual introduction, you've included a couple of poems as well. I thought you could read this one for us.
Yes, it's very appropriate because the forms were a nightmare. All those bloody forms placed like landmines on the narrow path to safety. Pay attention to detail. Find the names, the birth dates for your husband's parents in a land where birthdays just don't matter. Send PDFs of your passport photos, your marriage certificate, your academic records. One wrong move, one mistake or omission, and the whole painstaking process explodes, shatters dreams, destroys lives. Hard enough to deal with them here in Adelaide. We have the resources, computers, expert advice on hand, a swift and reliable internet. You, my dear, have only your phone with its camera, its keyboard, its integrated circuits, its ability to translate from English to Dari. Lose it, and you're stuffed. Even that vital interview with immigration is conducted via video link on your phone. Does it ever keep you awake, my dear, this one tenuous link between yourself and the world?
And Mij, by the time you were writing that, you're at a stage of your relationship with Laila where you call her my dear, and she probably calls you mum by then, where she started out by calling you Mrs. Mij Tanith in all of her communications. Let's walk it back to how you heard about Laila in the first place.
My partner Sue and I had been friends with an Afghan man called Juma for a couple of years, and how we met him is another story. But he came round one day, and I remember him standing in the living room, and his phone rang. He hadn't even had time to sit down, and he picked it up and he was speaking in Hazaragi to someone, and then he turned to Sue and me and said, "I'm talking to a woman who wants to know if there's anyone in Australia who can help her get a visa." And that's how it started. I picked up the phone. Laila had someone translating on the other end in Tehran. We spoke very briefly, and she said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "We can try."
And let's just remind ourselves that at this point in your life, you had just laid down the cudgels and thought, no more. I've done my dash, because you weren't a novice in this area.
No, we've been doing refugee support in a number of ways for Probably most of the last 25 years.
And you'd had some successes and you probably thought, okay, someone else can do it now?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. We raised a whole lot of money, probably around $50,000 back in the day, to bring 5 Congolese orphans to Australia to join their aunt and uncle. We had sprung an Iranian family out of Baxter by me almost on a daily basis going to pester Amanda Vanstone's staffer until they got so sick of me that they just said, okay, yeah, well, we'll release this family. We ran a huge project called the Safe Harbour Project, which involved a series of interactive art installations with a huge pretend boat that our friend built to bring an awareness to people of what was happening on Manus and Nauru to the prisoners there, the detainees. And that's how we met Juma.
So what made you think again and take on Laila's case?
Sue and I together, never looked at this stage for people to help. But if people crossed our path, if somebody crossed our path, we couldn't say no. Because we had the experience, the expertise, the contacts, we knew how to do it.
Well, I read the afterword to the book by
Libby
Hogarth. She talks about, what's her position, by the way, Libby?
She's the boss, I don't know what her real title is, of Migration Options Australia.
And she uses the phrase a tidal wave of despair, and how enormous the wave of applications was after Afghanistan particularly. Talk us through how Laila and her children managed to jump to the head of the queue.
By some kind of miracle. It really was a miracle. When I first started exchanging emails, as it was in the beginning with Laila, I said, we will try to help you, but your chances are very, very small. And they were. We didn't think we would have any success. But as the weeks and the months went on, the doors were not closing. And so we just kept going and kept going.
It was so unlikely that Laila would get approved and would get here. What were the standout miracles that got her over those hurdles?
One was the contact that I actually developed with Laila. It was such a deep, soulful contact that I just couldn't contemplate letting go of this. And I was determined to do whatever it took to get her here. Another was the help we had from Libby Hogarth. And another was the instrumental part that a woman called Amborica played in finally sending the application to the embassy in Amman, where it was picked up almost overnight, and she was given a date for her immigration interview. So those were the standout moments.
They're on the plane, they're flying to Doha, you've decided to meet them in Doha. Mm-hmm. What happens when they get off the plane and see you, and you see them?
It was amazing. I almost didn't make it to the gate where they were coming in. I was standing there and I saw the kids. Jamila was bending down doing something with a bag on the ground, and the 2 little ones just saw me and called out, "Mum Midge, Mum Midge." And then they just all ran towards me. Jamila came, she fell into my arms, she sobbed her heart out. I probably did, I can't remember, but it was just first physical contact. And it was a moment I'll never forget.
And we might think, hooray, happy ending, on they come to Adelaide and a house has been found for them, the house has been completely furnished, people are milling around, they can't do enough for this new family. But your poems then, in the second half of the book, take us through the nuances of the experience for Laila And I thought I'd ask you to read one that really got to me called The Kindness of Strangers.
Adelaide is full of people wanting to help. We're downsizing, furniture to give away. Would Laila be interested? I need a cleaner. Cash in hand, of course. A one-off job. Would Laila be... I have some towels, hardly used. Would Laila... We've got a big garden. We're having a barbecue. Plenty of room for the girls. Do you think she might come? We're holding a fundraiser. We need a guest speaker, a chance to tell her story. I translate each offer, each request, and each time something in you shrinks. If you demur politely, it's understandable. In Kabul, you were the one with status, a pillar of your community. You helped others, nurtured your students, advised their illiterate mothers. This new reality goes against the grain.
So, Midge, it's been, 18 months? A bit more since...
2 years.
2 years since they've been here. And you've been in that position of mum, really, really closely involved in their lives
Yes.
ever since. The girls are at school here, becoming more Australian by the day.
Mm-hmm.
How complete can the interconnection between an Aussie mum and Laila with her so different cultural background be? And do you feel that you have to step back sometimes?
That's a really hard question. Maybe I just give you examples. At the moment, Laila is really busy. She's got a new job. She's just about to start working 5 days a week. She's been at TAFE. When she's not at TAFE and when she hasn't been training for this job, she's still got 5 girls and very little time. She's always pressed for time. Things go wrong constantly with her. The car has a flat tyre, her fridge dies, there's an explosion of water outside on her street, which the Archangel has to fix. All of these things happen, and yet the other day when she got to her car and saw a flat tyre, while she was waiting for the RAA, she came round to my place because we hadn't seen each other probably for almost a week. And it wasn't for long, and it was unexpected, but these moments are sometimes all that we can grab at the moment. But the connection is incredibly strong. She's my daughter and she always will be.
That's certainly the feeling I get from the book. It is so beautiful. It really is, Midge. It's extremely moving. The other thing that you can't have any control over is how Laila is received by the local population, how the people she meets.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly people are only too full of goodwill. Sometimes it's a bit trickier than that. So I thought I'd get you to read a lovely little poem called Waiting Room.
A young mum fusses with the baby on her lap, watches her toddler do the rounds of all the patients. A charming extrovert. He'll break a few hearts. Even now he's got us all smiling. He watches the woman cleaning the aquarium. She squats to talk to him, points to each fish, describes them individually. She knows her stuff. The mum is amused, tolerant. Her proud look invites us all to share the moment. It's your turn, Laila, for his rapt attention. He points to your face, or is it your headscarf? You bend to say hello, and suddenly the young mum tucks her baby under one arm, darts across the room to pull the toddler away. No one speaks, but the silence is filled with knowing.
On a slightly lighter note, Midge, I loved all the poems about her cars. I think there's about 6 of them. They're a lovely metaphor for her huge determination
Yes.
to get out there on her own terms and be in charge of her own life.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through the story of the cars.
Well, coincidentally, Susan Hawthorne found the car poems also wonderfully.
Susan Hawthorne's the
evocative.
Spinifex publisher.
Yes.
Folks, yeah.
The first time I took Laila out driving was very new. She actually had an international license somehow arranged for her by a friend of a friend in Kabul, even though women aren't allowed to drive in Kabul. So there she was, clutching this international license, which meant that she could drive in Adelaide for a little while until it ran out. First time I took her out, we were going round a corner and I said, brake, brake, brake. She didn't know the word for brake. So she didn't. I've still got the dent on my bonnet.
And then someone gave her a car, but it was a great big old monster and it's just too big. And so she sold all of her gold jewellery
Yes.
to buy a second-hand car, and she did.
She did, and she took the money in cash, walked through the streets with $14,000 in cash, paid for her car in cash. It was such a moment of freedom for her, buying the car and then getting a license. But even then, there were still difficulties with driving, with finding her way, especially at night, in winter, in the rain. And then having a number of little scrapes with her car, because when she's really stressed, all of those newly acquired driving skills disappear.
And I think she said it's the end of one of the poems. Did she say it's a learning experience?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
I like her a lot from how I've met her in the book. Can you see very far ahead for Laila and the girls? Do you have a vision?
The girls are all flying. They're fine. They've all learnt English. They're all pretty much straight A students at school. The oldest one is 16 now. She has a job working in the central market. They are so comfortable, and they will absolutely fulfill their potential here in Australia. For Laila, the road is harder. She's going to struggle probably for quite a while, because there's so much for her to learn here, so much for her to still do as a mother with 5 kids, and she looks after them beautifully. She looks after her house beautifully. She just does everything to perfection. She gives herself a hard time because her English isn't perfect. She'll get there, but it's not easy for a single parent, for a single refugee parent. There are so many things that have to be overcome. Yes, life is full of challenges for Laila.
Well, Mij, now we have Laila's story and we can have it in our hands. Spinifex Press. Are you taking a step back now? And what do you want us to do? When we read the book, we're going to think, what can we do? What can we do?
If people read the book and they're inspired to do something for refugees, there is a section in the back about Circle of Friends Australia. Fabulous organisation. Nobody in the organisation gets paid anything, so that every cent donated, with the exception of bank charges, is spent on helping refugees, either in Australia or with visa applications or airfares for family reunion. So that's a fabulous way for people to get involved. And I would advise anyone who wants to help refugees to do just that.
And what are you doing right now?
I'm still trying to retire, still trying to take a back seat, but it's not going to happen. And just to give you an example, last Thursday, one of our Afghan friends came round to my place and said, "Mij, can I talk to you about something?" "Sure you can." And he described a situation of meeting another woman, Hazara, single-parent children, when he was visiting Iran recently. He and this woman worked together as colleagues in Bamiyan in Afghanistan as radio producers and journalists. Her situation is that she and the children have been given Australian visas, but the conditions of their particular visa is that they have to find their own money to pay for airfares to Australia. Not only airfares, but they need to pay the very expensive fine to be able to get their exit visas from Iran. So we had to come up with something like $23,000. And I said to this guy, yeah, I promise we'll do it. And so that was a week ago. And in a week's time, that woman and her 3 kids will be arriving in Adelaide because we have raised the money. We being Raf, Janet and me. Because we have the networks and we have the fabulously generous people that have helped Laila and have helped the 5 orphans way back then, we have such a loyal base of supporters. And they come through. They come through amazingly quickly and with amazing amounts of money.
Mij, more power to you, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
You were listening there to Mij Tanith. She's the author of Laila's Story from Spinifex Press. And you have been listening to Sundoku with me, Kath Keneally. Thank you for listening. Do send us anything that you have to say about books that you've been reading, a short review of a book that's caught your attention, anything at all, to sundokukast@gmail.com, and you might like to consider subscribing to us as well. Catch you next time. This podcast is produced by 4 book addicts refusing treatment.
Sarah Martin,
Annie Hastwell,
Michaela Andreev,
And me, Kath Keneally. Our thanks to composer Quincy Grant for the music. If you want to find out more about the books and authors featured in this program, check out the show notes. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Sundokukast, which is TSUNDOKU cast.